All right. Aloha mai kako. My name is
Aloha.
Landon Opunui, and I welcome everyone to Na Mo'olelo, a Kailua Canoe Club webinar series. We have one panelist. Hopefully another will join us shortly, but we have a very, very exciting webinar series to kick off this evening. I wanted to first begin with a brief pule. Car, would you like to share or would you like me to?
Okay. Kamoa's on and sees us, but I guess he's just having trouble.
Yeah, we'll see if Julie can figure that out. But I think for the time being, we need to move on.
Okay. How about you? Because he
Sure.
was going to do it, right?
All right. Oh, there he is.
Come on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I apologize, folks, but it's for some reason it won't let me on.
Yeah.
Well, you are on now, and you are with us.
Can you see me or no?
Cannot see you, but we can hear you.
If I can fix it. Okay, let's say a prayer real quick.
Okay.
So Kamoa's joined as an attendee, so doesn't have video. So, but we will be able to hear him okay. And we've just started Kamoa and our recording, yes, and our guests have joined.
Okay. Aloha, everyone. Let's just bow our heads. Ika inoa kamakua me kikeiki me kuhani hemalele amene o ke akua manaloa na lani ha mai kaala. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for blessing us with this opportunity to talk about the mo'olelo and the history of Kailua, which speaks more than beyond just canoe paddling, but just the history of a people and a community. Welcome, everyone. Aloha.
Mahalo, Kamoa. So again, as I mentioned, Na Mo'olelo is a webinar series created by Kailua Canoe Club to focus on mo'olelo, mana'o, and ike. That is the stories, the wisdom, and the knowledge of some of our members and beyond, so that we can contribute some value to our Kailua Canoe Club members as we unfortunately continue to struggle with being apart as a result of the pandemic. I wanted to first begin with a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording this video. All of those who are in the attendee view are not going to be recorded, so no worries there. We are not going to be able to see you or hear you, but if you do have any questions or comments, we highly encourage you to add them in the comments or the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Today's topic is about Kailua Canoe Club history. In Hawaiian culture, the past is very much present, and we have a concept called mo'oku auhau, or our genealogy. This is our connection to the past. So the very first episode, it makes perfect sense for us to kick it off talking about the history and the stories of where we come from. I'm going to begin introducing our very esteemed panelists before we begin our very exciting discussion talking about our history. Beginning first with Carlene Ornelas. A canoe paddler for many years, Carlene is a founding member and former president and head coach of Kailua Canoe Club. She participated in the very first long distance canoe race for women and the first Molokai to Oahu channel crossing in 1975. She is instrumental in organizing the first official Na Wahine o Kekai Molokai channel canoe race in 1979 and has participated in 35 Na Wahine o Kekai canoe races. She is the current chairperson of Na Wahine o Kekai. She continues to compete and experience many canoe races at home, nationally, and internationally. She credits her love of paddling and steering to her incredible coaching mentors, way too many to even mention. She advises the only way a woman can put in this many years of paddling while holding down a full-time job and raising a family is with the support and kukua of loving parents, a caring husband, and 4 children who did their share so mom can paddle outrigger canoes. The future of canoe racing is wide open throughout the world, and she is so grateful and thankful. thankful. Mahalo, Carlene, for joining us. Our next
Thank you.
panelist is Kamoa. Kamoa Kalama is one of 11 children raised in Kailua. Began paddling at the age of 6 in a PC-1 canoe made from a piece of tin with 2x4s at the end with yako and ama made from the hau tree. His formal paddling career began at the early age of 8 in 1964 with Kailua Canoe Club. In 1968, Kamoa joined the Kailua Hawaiian Civic Club, and he paddled in the first long distance race at the age of 13 from Kailua to Waikiki, where he was part of the only crew of Kailua's 5 entrants to finish. He is a very, very accomplished paddler and includes 50 EV channel crossings, 43 Molokai Hoi finishes, 2 OC6 solo crossings, 2 OC1 solo crossings, 4 OC1 relay crossings. He's a silver medalist in the US Nationals K4 racing, and he is one of the top 10 winningest steersmen at the McFarland Regatta in Waikiki. So all you kids out there, you definitely want Kamoa steering you for 4th of July. Kamoa attended St. Anthony Grade School, Damien and Kailua High School, Western Oregon University, University of Washington, and the University of Hawaii Law School. In his professional career, he worked at First Hawaiian Bank for 32 years and the Weinberg Foundation for 8. He was director of the Castle Foundation for 15 years, a Kamehameha Schools trustee for 13 years, the Friend of Hawaii Charities president for 12 years, and the director of Polynesian Voyaging Society for 4 years. Mahalo and welcome, Kamoa and Carlene. To kick off our discussion, I thought it might be appropriate to first begin with the question of how and when did Kailua Canoe Club get its first start? Who'd like to join with that question?
Oh,
I think you're on mute, Kamoa.
I grew up with 5 sisters, so I'll have Carlene go first.
well, you know, there's in 1971 is when my husband Cliff Ornelas and Jimmy Marcial got together to start Kailua Canoe Club. So there's history before that, as they, you know, they were accomplished paddlers in paddling and coaching. And they, you know, came to, you know, a time in their life when they wanted to start their own, and they were approached by Kailua Hawaiian Civic Club, who had a koa canoe, Kalana Kila. You know, they asked them to start a canoe club, and they did. But, you know, at some later point, Jimmy Marcial, who's still with us, is going to give us that history. So from us, Kailua Canoe Club, in 1971, we started the process of the canoe club meeting with, you know, the key people, charter members, that is the history of Kailua, you know, lots of families, you know, Kalamas, the Hanleys, my family, Kamoa's family, the Ho'olulus, the O'Haras, so many people, the Kavakos, and all their families were paddlers. So with this group of about 50 people, you know, Beanie and Lynn, and, you know, we incorporated Kailua Canoe Club, you know, raising money and actually purchasing the canoe from Kailua Hawaiian Civic Club. You know, they, you know, we went in as paddlers and actually voted for them to sell us the canoe, and they had to, because we were all members. So, you know, it was, and it was a good thing, because, you know, we were under them, who were Kailua Hawaiian Civic Club was telling the paddlers, you know, how to paddle, when, you know, we were ready to begin our own journey as Kailua Canoe Club. And they saw that. They sold us the canoe, and, you know, we borrowed one canoe, one fiberglass training canoe, which had 5 seats, and that's all we had. And then, you know, the first canoe we got that we owned was the Water Wiggle, which
Let me interject before we get into the canoe history. Just a little bit. I think Carlene references 1971, but I think it is important that when we have the opportunity to have one of our remaining founders, coaches, Jimmy Marcel, to come on, that we can do that in the future piece. But I think just to understand the history of canoe paddling in Kailua, there weren't that many canoe clubs in Hawaii to begin with. We had Ko'olaupoko Lions Canoe Club, which was started in the 40s. And then Kaiwani Canoe Club was actually started in 1952. And out of those clubs came a lot of today's canoe clubs as you go through. So Jimmy Marshall will be able to share a lot of that with us. And Carlene and I spent a lot of time right at the end by Buzz's. That's where our club practiced. And to her, we had that 5-person canoe that we borrowed. Our koa canoe, we used to practice in it, just to give some history. And I think the stories will be illustrated well when we have the opportunity to get Jimmy Marcial to talk about what was behind the drive to come. Both, I observed Cliff Ornelas and Jimmy Marcial as a youngster observing them. I was always really impressed and intrigued, because in their minds, and I think that's where we talk about the spirit and the strength behind Kailua Canoe Club, it started with those two. They felt that they were invincible, and they told us we were invincible. And they would tell us that when we went into races, we were very prepared. We trained extremely hard, but they expected us to put our best effort forward and do well.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah, it was, right, Carlene? And it was just a sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, they just really expected us to do well every time.
Yeah, they, while they demanded excellence, it was fun. It was a fun excellence, and they were very articulate. They, technique was very important. We developed over the years the Kailua stroke, and it was just demanding excellence from the paddlers and the coaches. And so they met a lot to go over every crew and, every race and every event. And it was just so much strategy involved with those two.
I think, Landon, just a little bit more for context of what was going on in canoe paddling in those days. You had Kaiwani Canoe Club, which was extremely powerful, coached by Uncle Stu Kalama, Heine Gramberg, that group, and they were a force. And Hawaiian Civic Club gave Jimmy and Cliff an opportunity to start their own canoe club. And Jimmy and them, they were just brash, confident guys that thought they could. I remember observing I'm like Max, a 2,000-year-old mouse. I remember I was a little kid standing by them when they were basically talking to their mentor, George Perry, who everybody references, and basically telling him in a roundabout way, we are going to win. This is a Kailua Beach race. With our boat that was shorter than most canoes, we could be in a race where the front of our boat was behind number 1, and the back of our boat is ahead of number 5. So that was a Kalanakila with the square back. So a lot of history, but I think in the future we can talk about the beginning of Kailua Canoe Club and get the spirit, because many of the names that Carlene mentioned were her relatives and my relatives, but it reflected Kailua and the diversity, which is really Espositos, Grambergs, Kims, Akakas, Orgeles, Lapitoks, Wongs, Ferreras, your mother-in-law and them. So the whole bit. So it's all good. Yeah, the Gallaghers and the Thurstons and
that were all
Vigas, they're all around there. So yeah.
So I can only imagine that Kailua has really transformed quite a bit in the last 3, 4, 5 decades. And it sounded like right from the get-go, one of the key reasons for creating the club was to compete. Different people have different reasons for paddling, some recreation, some to be outside, some to reconnect with their Hawaiian culture. I'm curious if any of you can share a little insight on what paddling was like 40, 50 years ago in Kailua.
Very competitive. I'll tell you this, and Carlene will remember this. The newspapers used to actually rate the races before the races, project who was going to win the race and why. They would have this actually in the sports page for every different race based on conditions. They would actually rank those things to see which crew was going to be. And it was everything from the 13-year-olds on up. They'd rank every race. It was very competitive, no different than today. We didn't, like I say, you described my one-man canoe. That was a piece of tin. I wasn't the only one who had one. Many people in Kailua had tin canoes. And that's how we became very accustomed to the ocean. And our elders around in the neighborhood taught us a lot about current and tide and just respecting and caring for one another. So I do think the club, what made our club really special is the fact that we had a whole bunch of aunties and uncles that we knew cared for us, took care of us, and trained us hard, and they had the right to discipline us too. And we had to, so we learned that there was more to canoe paddling than just being competitive. But in order to be competitive, we had to put in the time and the work. So it was a very competitive time. They would time the races and compare. I give you an idea. One of the first races that we went into is when I was sitting in 5 and I was paddling 13 and under because they didn't have 12s. We did a quarter mile, I'll give you an idea, in 1:58. Never forgot that. This guy, Brian Esposito, was coaching us. Barry McEwen, who was colorblind, asking me where his flag was steering. And those are names that went on through paddling, became good ocean people a long time. But it was just very, very competitive. Kailua too, we actually had a state race in Kailua. And in that year, they allowed an 18-year-old crew from Catalina to come to race in Hawaii. And our 18 and under crew, the Baxters, Melvin and Elvin Baxter, were in that crew. They were winning all year long, and the mainland crew beat them by a nose. But that was when the race was at Kailua Beach. And it's written about in the folklore in Catalina about how Billy Whitford was in that crew that came to Honolulu and beat the Hawaii crew. But interesting.
That's history, yeah. And you know, I mean, it's not that they were innovative, but they taught from technique. You know, you sat in the sand and you had a broomstick and they taught you to stroke. They had resistance training in 1967. You know, they tied you
to a tree,
you know, with a rubber. And that was your resistance. You know, they put a tire in the front of your canoe and that was resistance. But, you know, we don't do that anymore because you can get hurt and we're all getting older. But, you know, there was a lot of skill and experience where they came from to teach the next generation, which is what we want to continue doing.
That's where, you know, Lani, you talk about rediscovering the past. You know, in modern day, there's a lot of resistance and interval and those types of things. The resistance was the idea was the same, right? The idea was same about leverage, placement, good catch. But our resistance was, you know, add weight, put bricks, fill burlap bags full of sand, carry that in the boat, drag a bucket in the back, put a tire on the front. But nowadays you get the resistance in different ways, and we've learned how to train a little more with a lot more education and nutrition.
Fast training.
Yeah.
So maybe
the clubs were small, so we trained every night. We had paddling every night because the club was small, you know.
So that's a great segue to my next question. Maybe Car, you can start with this one. It's a two-part question. One is, how big was the club in the first few years of its inception? And how have you seen the club evolve to the 500 plus members that we have today?
In 1971, 1972 is when we incorporated. There was about 50 paddlers, and I want to include parents, you know. We just, you know, at the time, you weren't registering people. I mean, you did register them, but you could pull people off the beach to jump in your canoe to race. You know, it was that small. And, you know, that first year, there was about 50 people involved in starting Kailua Canoe Club. You know, and then, you know, when we started the club training, more people would come. And then, you know, in a couple of years, we had 100. By 1995, we had about 250 paddlers. You know, and I have that in the history, right? So, you know, a couple decades later, we went from 50 to 100 to 250 and just kept building. You know, we are a beach community. Lanikai is a beach community. So we have these two clubs with 500 paddlers, each club, you know, and then you have clubs on the Alawai. There's 10 clubs there with 100 paddlers in each club. So, you know, Kailua, I think we're really fortunate that, you know, our clubs have built the way they have, and it's just quite the sport. You know, it was in competition with a lot of school sports as the years went by, but the guys, you know, they played football same time as paddling. So we were, you know, I mean, our guys, come on, them were doing, many of them were doing both sports.
Yeah, just a real interesting, you know, we give you an idea. I remember when I was 13, we went to Nauwiliwili Harbor for a state race. We went up there, I think, with only 13 crews. We won 7 of the 13 races. And we didn't lose the regatta till the end of the day. Remember that, Carlene?
Yeah.
We stayed in the Niumalu Hotel, but we were very, and then every year we grew, but what was really restricting us was we didn't have that many canoes to practice. And then over time, Cliff and Jimmy were just terrific recruiters, you know, and then we were befriended by different people that bought us, that basically gave us money to buy canoes or would loan a canoe to us. And so our club grew over time, but we were a very good, it was us, and then Kaioni had a club, and Lanikai had a good club. But at that time, we started growing. We just attracted a lot of good people. Cliff and Jimmy were really good about their history, and being able to bring on good mentors, Cappy Vickery, John Cavaco, Walter McCalla, and they really influenced us because they trained us, but they took us with them. And so, you know, like you referenced, I got to race distance at 13. What happened was Cliff came to my house. We were living right there behind Buzz's, and they needed a steersman. So I went down there just to fill in one day, and next thing you know, I was racing. That was it. And they taught you to respect the ocean, but never to fear it. So they constantly brought people on, but the coaches were just excellent in nurturing people. And that emanated from Jimmy and Cliff coaching us. And the club's just grown since then.
So we can all see this logo on our screen here. I thought we could maybe shift our focus to the logo. I'm curious if one or both of you can share some insights on the colors maybe, and some of the olelo within the logo.
You know, Jimmy, who, you know, again, we need to get on here. Jimmy chose the colors because, and it's really buff and blue. It's not blue and gold.
Yeah.
Okay. And, you know, at the time, Outrigger Canoe Club was very, they were dominant. There was Heilani, Huinalo, everybody was strong, and we were building, we were new. They've already been paddling for decades, you know, Kailua was new. So, but the reason behind the colors, buff and blue, is, you know, for Outrigger, you know, all their paddlers went to Punahou, right? So, you know, you can get your mind thinking on that, right? What is buff and blue? It's Punahou. We took their colors and really showed it off. And he, you know, Cliff, Jimmy's story is way better, but that's what, you know, I'm interpreting. Cliff researched the paddle man because at the time nobody had it, and you know, he actually went through all the books and found this petroglyph, which became our, you know, our symbol, our logo. It's, you know, pretty good. You know, the shape of the logo is represents the kalo leaf. And, you know, Jimmy had his reasons, you know, it's, you know, of course, you know, Haloa, right? So it was, you know, at the time it was very cultural also. And there was a lot of culture that went into it. The, you know, and then we got into the, our phrase there, which, you know, come on.
Now, you know, I mean, Lana, when you look at, I think again, it's hard to get away from history, and because history dictated for us what our pathway was going to be. They actually formed the pathway for us to continue to rediscover, you know, Jimmy and Cliff. And I think when you, as Carlene was talking, I remember I like to research things. I was looking back at what preceded all the canoe paddling, and Outrigger Canoe Club was one of the strong clubs at that time. Outrigger, because of Punahou, they had all the athletes. Outrigger was strong, Huinalo was strong, and Kailua, the area was Kolaupoku Lions Canoe Club. But when you look back, and that's why I you'll love Jimmy when he gets on here. I pulled up pictures of Jimmy, Tay Perry, Russell Wilbur, all the names that went on and just dominated paddling for years. We're all part of that. They're on the opposite side racing against outrigger as kids. And so when you look at our logo, it went through some changes, right? The name, the words here, and that over time. We were, when Olelo Hawaii wasn't as visible, let me put it that way. Kailua Canoe Club was influenced by a man named Russ Apple. And he spoke fluent Hawaiian. Not a drop of Hawaiian, but loved Hawaiian culture. And he had a son, Kuahivi, that I swear was about 40, but they said he was only 12 racing against us. He was very strong. But Russell had come back to us with a saying for the club itself. But I mean, you look at it, what does hana mean? Hana means to work, to paddle together. Lima is hands. How do you paddle together? You know, so just we talk about don't just talk, do it. You know, we preceded Nike. Just do it. You know, we preceded them, so they copied us. And I say that in jest, but the whole idea behind anything that was that strove for excellence, you know, the Hawaiian Se Kulia Ikanu'u, that's what Cliff and Jimmy brought to the club, which is captured in this saying over here. You know, don't talk, do it. And they would make sure that they got us so tired practicing that we couldn't talk. And if you talk, they made you practice harder. But that's, I mean, the spirit and the ohani in our logo is that. I never knew the story behind the blue and gold. I used to wonder why do we have Punahou colors? You know, you're right. But that's a first time I've heard that. So really, never stop learning.
I absolutely love that study, that story as a Kamehameha graduate and you know, 4-year student athlete. I've had you know, a lot of battles and competition between you know, Kamehameha and Punahou. So taking their colors and kind of antagonizing them a little bit, I find very humorous.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, it's a spirit of friendly rivalry, right?
And what's been really neat, Landon, is as you sit down and you talk to some of these guys that are still alive, they were in the picture with Jimmy, and I talk about that race at Kailua that they were all in before I was even born, they can tell you exactly what happened. Tay Perry, who was there, and it's really neat to see. And they tease each other, and they'll talk about this stuff, you know. And Jimmy, you're gonna find Jimmy to be a rascal, and so that's his spirit has never left the club. Both he and Cliff were rascals, yeah, in a good way.
And they, you know, they come from good stock also. Their mentors and teachers were the best. You know, George Perry, who was Lonnie Kai's coach and canoe builder. You know, he's a master canoe builder. His kids are still building canoes. They, you know, Cliff and Jimmy were both very successful businessmen. And so out of that, you know, came a really good club, you know, a really successfilo club that was very successful. And we won our first state championship in 1975, you know, in Hilo. And it came down to the last point. It came down to the last race, and Outrigger was ahead of us, you know, in the regatta. And, you know, we heard that they had already called home and said we won, you know, and the last race came on, and we had to beat Surf Club in order to beat Outrigger by 1 point, which was just amazing because it was just happening right there. And the whole beach was just out of control. It was so amazing. But good fun, you know, and that kind of started the canoe club in many years of
we dominated, to be
dominating.
Yeah, we crushed for years.
You know, there was the world championship paddling. There was so many races that they were coming up with, and you know, we just were a really big force in it.
Yeah, it's really, the other part too, as I mentioned earlier, the Cliff and Jimmy, when I go back to them again, they were able to attract terrific paddlers. So a lot of the mentors that she talks about were coming out of the top crews at Surf Club. Had a terrific men's crew, unbelievable. Dachi Kino, Cappy Vickery, Val Ching. Those guys came over to our club to help build our program and mentor all of us. Patter and all those guys.
George Downing, you know.
George Downing, hang out with those guys, you know, and you get that mana'o from them that just is priceless. So they're just really fortunate as a club to be able to be a place where people felt comfortable. In the early years of that picture I referenced, Gary Murakami was in that picture. Years go by, Gary's coaching Heilani for a long time. Masters, we need paddlers to come over from Masters. When Masters first started, who came in paddle? We had Gary. In one Masters crew, they won Molokai Masters. Gary Murakami, Tommy Holmes, all the names, they all pulled together in one crew with Bobby Cates. They came to Kailua Canoe Club to join Bobby. And they won, so we've been very, very fortunate to have that in our memory banks.
Kailua Canoe Club is a large club, and we are very much a part of the Kailua community here. So I was hoping we could shed a little light on some of the community activities and maybe even some of the races that Kailua Canoe Club is responsible for historically, and then also maybe currently.
Cart, you want to go?
Well, we've been sponsoring the Kailua Regatta, the Kinkamehameha Day Regatta for, many, many years. We took it over from Okra. Was HCRA actually was the blanket association for every canoe club. And then through the years, and our guys, our coaches, and some of the leaders from other clubs went in to break it down to counties, to form each island association from HCRA. And, they were sponsoring all the races. And then the club in the area started taking the race off the hands of HCRA to sponsor your community. So we were really lucky to get Kailua Regatta. There's only 6 regattas, so only 6 clubs can sponsor races, and we have one of the best ones here. We do the Kailua Bay Challenge, which Kamoa can probably talk about, but one of the big fundraisers we had as a young club was a Dash and Splash, and it went for years and years and years before all these other little biathlons came on, and it was a really fun thing that the club did. We ran the Lanikai Loop and swam Kailua Bay. And we did that for many years. It was one of our first big fundraisers, other than, selling Lau Lau. We had to do all the hard work to raise money, Now, right, we just add it to the dues. That's our fundraising. We just add our fundraising to the dues because everyone's so busy, but back then we had time and we did it as the family. We made the 2,000 or 3,000 Lau Laus. We cooked the 500 pounds of pig or sponsored a luau, which was really family oriented, but it's just, the clubs have kind of outgrown that type of thing, which, the clubs, the members are, who haven't experienced that. It was such a fun time. We used to go camping every year, but that's when we had 200 paddlers. We have 500 now. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Carlene, go. Some of the other activities we had, Carlene had already mentioned a couple of them, but we also had this race that was probably one of the most challenging canoe races ever.
Yes.
It was an iron race from Kahana Bay to Kailua. All the toughest crews would enter that race, and it was a race of grit, passion, and camaraderie.
It was an iron race.
It was an iron race from Kahana Bay to Kailua, and they were brutal. And we embraced the Hawaiian culture of you have to carry a fish. Everybody had to carry a fish in that boat, and when you finished, we had a person
presented
in the role of an ali'i on the beach, Kailua Beach, down by Kalapoi Market. We would end there, and you would have to finish and run in and put your fish to the ali'i in the bowl, in the calabash that was there. And if you didn't put your fish in, doesn't matter. If somebody got there after you and put their fish in, they won.
Yeah.
It was the most physically challenging race I'd ever been in till today. People do, Kona went to iron. This thing was uphill all the way to Mokapu. And there's so many stories that we could share about that with our crew. And I raced with Carlene's brother, and that where people would just literally fall out, pass out. And you had to finish with 6 people. So their races were for us. Yeah, we led for the whole race. We got to Pupuia Island, Flat Island. Our guy had passed out and fallen in the water, we have to, and an escort boat picked them up. We have to stop, pick him up, and put him back in the boat. And we're giving him CPR in the canoe to finish the race. That would never happen today. We took him to the hospital. He's dehydrated. Bob Bongiorno, he survived, but it was
it was
that,
like 1975.
And then we had big sponsors. Dillingham Corporation was our sponsor, and then eventually that race, people stopped coming because it was just too hard. But it was a good preparatory race for Molokai, you know, the race after that, because we didn't have as many races as we went through. Some of the other activities, I think the community activities were the cultural activities, the things that we did. My mom was an integral part of our club and making sure that when you look at our webpage, she talks about the word aloha. She brought that, and she was our spiritual leader for our club that came in that would provide us with that guidance. But what's been very encouraging for me is, you know, all of our boats, our canoes and stuff embrace the uhani of the person or the people that we wanted to emulate. We talked about in our history, we talk about the boat that was dedicated to Ko'okeoki to George Malama, who was one of our initial coaches. This is a guy that looked like Kamehameha, was the size of Kamehameha, and was as strong as Kamehameha, George Malama. Important individual that people would speak about for a long time. But you had that, but all of our canoes carry the history of our club, and I know we can spend time on that, but it's just really interesting to see the community activities was that in the canoe, recognizing, bringing back the names of people that were integral to Kailua and the ahupua'a of Kailua. So Kawainui, and being able to tell the stories of the place, and to have the kupuna come and share that, and then now to have it passed down through the generations to where we have people like Kaleo Wong or Brad and those folks really trying to put together environmentally responsible activities. So our club goes up and cleans out Kailepulu, for example, but it allowed us to go ahead and share the culture of Hawaii to the entire Hawaiian community, and at the same time emphasize the importance of education, a whole number of things. So there have been just a number of activities that have been done that have been meaningful and mindful to Kailua and the community of Kailua.
Oh, Kahana Bay to Kailua. That sounds brutal. I usually go the other direction, and it's a much quicker ride, I'm sure.
And one last thing, in those days too, it was from a sports standpoint, you can appreciate this, all of us. If you drank water during something like that, you were weak, right? So nobody drank water the whole race.
Yeah, it was.
No one drank water. I'll give you my water ration was a frozen can of juice taped under the seat. There was no hydration.
It was really survival of the fittest.
It was just a brutal time. We've progressed a lot since then.
Yeah.
So both of you have already mentioned some pretty impressive things that Kailua Canoe Club has done over the years, but I was hoping each of you can maybe talk about a couple of what you believe are Kailua Canoe Club's greatest accomplishments.
Car?
Well, we're a nonprofit, and we appreciate that, and we're in a community. And as we evolved in our community, we began to give back a lot. We sponsor a lot of kids in our club who can't afford to paddle. Nobody will be excluded because they can't afford to paddle. They can't pay the dues. Keeping our parks clean. Doing ashes, spreading ashes. I mean, they just come down and ask us to do it, and we never turn anybody down. We don't charge anybody if we don't have a price for them. If if they want to donate, that's fine. But and we try to do whatever the club, the family wants to do. We try to help them do that. And sometimes, at one time we were doing like 3 a week, a lot of ashes, but we don't ever turn it down. If we can't do it, we will ask someone else. And even right now, when we don't even have canoes, Kamoa's going out and borrowing private canoes, and the family wants to do ashes. I mean, that's their last thing they're going to do, right? And I think Kailua has really given back to our community with the kids and the paddlers, and and you know, the people that have gone through, you know, the journey of Kailua Canoe Club come and gone. You know, some of us came and never left, but many of them come and you become really tied into them, and then they're gone, and then one day they'll come back to the beach and say, remember me, you know, is Kamoa here, is Car here, you know, and you know, it's really a lifetime of friendship and camaraderie and support and from each other, and you know, it's a team sport. You know, we really, you know, bring families together. People who don't have families are in a family now. It's just, you know, it's, you know, you're on the ocean. It's like, why do we do this for so many years? There's a reason you're out there, you know, for 50 years paddling, right? We could have done something else and made a lot of money doing it, but, you know, we chose to stay and paddle. You know, we gave up a lot to paddle because we love it, right?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, very well said, Carlene. I would say, you know, we've all been blessed being able to be influenced by terrific people, to be able to spend time in a beautiful place. You know,
Okay.
as a result of the blessing, we've accepted the kuleana. Kailua has accepted the kuleana of, or borrow the phrase, of paying it forward and caring for other people. I think Kailua has always been viewed as a very welcoming club. It's interesting when some of my other friends, in other clubs, who often say, you know, Kailua, you guys is really a good group club. I said, yeah, we're a good club. We welcome people, you know, and we've got to balance the need to win, because you win in so many different ways in life, right? To maintaining relationships and that type of thing. So when I look at Kailua's accepted the kuleana of fulfilling the responsibility they come to it, being blessed. And then the other part, just the Canoe Club has played an integral role in larger issues in educating children. It's not unusual for folks to come and ask for guidance from members of the Canoe Club because of the diversity that exists in our club. As you see it, we've got doctors, lawyers, teachers, a lot of parents, that every child is their child. I mean, every child there has a mother or father, even though it's Hanait. We're proud of being largely influenced by the Hawaiian culture. We've been able to share how we've been able to build a bridge to really show value in caring for one's environment and area, but to do it in a way that's respectful and to be an educator. It's Kailua. I mean, when I look at that, it's just the acceptance of a kuleana of being responsible to the blessings that we have, that we move forward. We care for people. You know, Carlene is like my sister. I mean, we worry about each other, even though when we're not around, but and even when we're around, worrying about each other. But it's just that concern that you never want anybody to be abandoned. So that's Kailua Canoe Club. I mean, you can look at our coaches, look at the extension of the programs that are there. Many of our coaches are out spending time off season to coach high school kids, grade school kids, coaching kayaking, coaching baseball, and different things. They're just good members of the community.
So beautifully said by both of you, and a true testament of who we are at Kailua Canoe Club. As we approach the top of the hour and begin to wrap up and close our conversation today, I did want to end with one last question. It's a big question, so feel free to take as long as you need to answer it. But I wanted to go back to the past again. The topic of today's discussion was to talk about Kailua Canoe Club's history. And as I mentioned, the past is still very much present. We learn from the past, we grow from the past, and we connect with the past. So over your time with Kailua Canoe Club, I want each of you to share a lesson or two that you have learned by paddling and coaching and interacting with all of the members and founders and board members of Kailua Canoe Club.
Well, I think Kamoa can talk about, you know, the ancestors, you know, how our ancestors got here. And even if it wasn't on a canoe, it was on a ship of some, you know, through the ocean, you know, the travel, the, you know, that part of it. But, you know, when I started paddling, there was only 4 women's crews, okay? Novice, freshman, junior, senior. And there was 100 young novices trying out for a crew, right? So, you know, the crew, my first crew of novice women, I mean, we are still pals. We're still friends from 1968, 1967, 1968 to this day. You know, some of them are no longer paddling, but they're still in our family. You know, they're participate in our everything we do. You know, we keep in touch. We, you know, there's you know, the O'Haras, right? That was my first crew, Gabe, Minton, you know, and we're still pals. You know, it's just something that really keeps you together. You know, your first crew and your next crew and your next crew, because a crew doesn't stay together forever. You're going to break up, which is heartbreaking when your first crew breaks up, but you're going to make a new crew and you're going to make new pals. And there's so many pals out there that is, like Kamoa said, you know, your family. But I think the cultural part of it, you know, how we all got here, and we're still in outrigger canoes. You know, what the Hokulea did and still doing that. That's just so amazing, you know, for our kids and our grandkids who are going to be doing this, you know, forever. And, you know, the generations and the decades later after we've gone, you know, there's still the outrigger canoe and how our ancestors got here.
Thanks, Carlene. There's a saying that's going through my mind that has been shared with all of us over time, Lanakila Malua Okalokahi, you know. You know, we've been victorious, but victory comes in so many different ways, right? Victory through being able to establish relationships, to sustain, to grow the relationships. But that could only happen because we're together as a group. You know, you talk about Hawaiian to say lukahi akulike, right? Through seeing the strength in being together and family and everything. So canoe paddling family will go on forever. The other part too with canoe paddling, when I say that saying Lanakila Malo Okolakahi, it goes far beyond just our canoe club. The relationships and the competitions that we engaged in with our competitors from all the different clubs when we were 12, 13, you know, those now have grown into lifelong relationships. And what it did for us as canoe paddlers was allowed us to bridge those gaps that that existed for no other reason that we were born in different places or we were born into different means. But as canoe paddlers, it taught us to see each other as people. And so till today, I can think back to the first time I raced against many folks that were at all the different clubs. Till today, they're my friends, my real friends. And in my peer group, Bruce Blankenfeld and I have been racing together against each other since we were kids. Nainoa Thompson, Walter Guild, all that group. The guys on the Van Giesens out in Makaha. All of those folks, the Keolanas and all of them, those are all parts. So they brought they allowed the communities to come together, and it because of the diversity that existed, both socioeconomically and just from a ethnic standpoint, canoe paddling erased all that stuff. And at the same time, too, we were able to share our Hawaiian culture to those that didn't know, but felt comfortable enough to say they don't know, but now they know. And even for us that as youngsters, not being able to travel the world, to be educated by those that were able to travel, to come back and say, this is what this place is like. So it allowed us to dream. So canoe paddling, being able to take that stroke in the water was a very meaningful stroke to take, because it allowed us to be exposed to so much. And so when I think about canoe paddling, I see the world, you know, and I see it in people. And as Carlene was mentioning, we all come from different places. We're all different ethnicities, but we're all people. And so as Carlene was talking about, I was thinking about my Portuguese grandmother coming over from the Azores on a boat. That story is shared with so many people in our community. We talk about the English folks that are there, the Chinese, the Portuguese, the Lampitoks and the Orgeloses that till today, the person that cleans our park, Evelyn, that's my classmate, they've been living across the street since the beginning of time. Vivian Higa, her road up there, Bobby Thurston, the Manoas, the Espositos. You go into Kailua town, the Wongs, the families are there. You know, Susie Gallagher, she's a Susie Kalama to me. Pat O'Malley is Pat Kalama, you know, and I'm a Hanley. I spent so much time at Carlene's house up there on Akalani Street, or at Uncle Huchi's house across the street where their house was where the park is now, parking lot. So, I mean, it's just a rich time for us, and it's just an opportunity for us to hopefully have people recognize that paddling is much more than being in the canoe. It's a relationship that stays with you forever, and understanding the culture and being comfortable to make yourself vulnerable, to ask the big questions, and to know that somebody's going to be there to help find an answer even if they don't know it. So this is Kailua Canoe Club has been very special, and canoe paddling in general.
Yeah, and you know, I don't mean to leave. There's so many people that was around at the time. You know, the Malamas and the Coelhos. There's so many people. I don't mean to leave anybody out, but I will make sure that our history is posted on the website so that they can go and see who the people was the people who were involved at the time, because I know this first one is all about the history, how we started and how we evolved, you know, through the years. So, you know, we'll get our history of names up there, because, you know, there's some people now that are paddling and probably that was their relatives and they didn't even know, you know, that 5 decades ago, you know, their auntie helped start Kailua Canoe Club, you know.
And I do think, London, canoe paddling has taught a lot of life lessons, in the sense that everybody in that canoe is important. Everybody is important. So making sure that emotionally we uplift each other, making sure that to recognize that everybody's putting their best effort forward all the time, and to think that way, and to ask myself, am I doing enough, rather than is the other person doing enough? And so and to recognize that people are always going to stumble, right? And we're going to be there to pick them up, and recognize they're stumbling not because they desire not to perform to a level that one may think they should. They stumble because they're trying their best, you know. And I think that's brought out. We've been able to build winning crews at Kailua with people that sometimes were not thought of by other individuals, or even in their own lives, they never were given the opportunity to really be in a position to assert themselves and to be in a supportive environment like Kailua Canoe Clubs provides to people. So
beautifully said. But before I close, we did get one question from the audience. One of the goals of this webinar series is to interact with our canoe club virtually, because this is one of the few ways that we can connect right now. So I was hoping I could ask it, and one of you can provide a quick answer. The question: what was the name of the family that we had in the canoes in their yard by Pinky's?
remember that Bob. I'm not sure what Bob's last name was, but his first name was Bob.
Oh my God.
Yeah, his name was Bob.
The Valleys.
Bob Valley. Somebody wrote in there. Edie wrote Bob Valley. Yeah.
That's a whole nother chapter. I tell you, that was another best days of our lives. You know, we had our endless summers, decades of endless summers is just incredible. Bob Valley and his family just stumbled upon Kailua Canoe Club. We were in the parking lot at Pingy's and they said, you can come use our yard. And pretty soon all the kids are paddling, you know.
I would say this. I think, you know, something that I'm thinking about, that even if we get back to paddling again, maybe what we should include for our club is to have just a talk story time. You know, we may not be able to do a blue and gold, but be able to sit there and just share stories. Because even like with Edie chiming in on the name, right? All these different stories. We can have we had pro football players come in, walk out on their contract, refuse to sign, and come and paddle canoe season with us. Russell Francis.
Francis.
Turned down his contract with New England Patriots, paddle with us. He's the biggest mixed paddler we ever had, you know?
Yeah.
So there's so many stories of people that would come over. Carlene's brothers were everywhere. and very good paddlers. You know, yes,
Yeah, it was quite the journey, you know, and I mean, I hope we can, you know, instill some of the excellence that we had at the time, you know, I mean, it's so big, it's so hard, you know, it was, you know, they had full control at the time of, you know, you had 100 paddlers and now you have 500. It's, you know, it's.
but we do have a special club. I'll say that. You know, like today, Tsunami Watch, boom, the note goes out, gang, we need help. Everybody's ready to jump down there. When you think of that, I was telling my friends on the Leon on the call, I was on the 20. I just got a message to see if I can go down and move the canoes. Where? From the beach. Isn't there a tsunami? Yep, our canoe club's going to go down there with the tsunami. You know, it's just, but we're a club. We're a club that appreciates each other. So.
I couldn't agree more. I learned so much tonight, and I wanted to thank both of our panelists for their time, for sharing their mo'olelo, their mana'o, their ike. I wanted to thank the audience for joining us this evening. Thank you for your flexibility. We're still kind of working out the kinks to this whole technology issue. Hopefully future episodes go smoothly. I wanted to thank my team who's kind of helping me behind the scenes here. Julie, Auntie D, Lyda, Susie. I want to thank our board for supporting this webinar series. And this is hopefully just the very beginning of this project for which we hope to expand upon. Both of our panelists mentioned Jimmy as being a very important guest, so we will definitely have him in the future. But we also have very many talented Kailua Canoe Club members. We have a lot of exciting topic ideas, and we want to bring on new guests, and we want to grow this so that, again, we can capture all of this knowledge, we can share it for future generations, and we can continue to grow and connect together as a club, even though we are sharing this virtual space. So mahalo, me ke aloha, ahui ho, and good evening to you all.
Mahalo, mahalo,
Thank
Landon.
you, mahalo.
For your leadership. Mahalo, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Ahui ho.